Hi friends, we're back for another round of Real Talk with Real Parents. And I'm coming to you with a little bit of a heavy heart. I've been having a little bit of a rough time with some folks in my world who are older or acting younger than they should. um, and a fair amount of manipulation and gaslighting going on. And it's some tricky stuff to maneuver. And so I'm especially feeling you today on, those times when you're not feeling your best and you've been through some things and, it's just like an exhausting day emotionally, or just, some relationships that are strained, and it's hard, it's hard. It's not like, you're in your, you can just go do and kind of move on. Like there can be quite a bit to work through. So if you have any heaviness today and you're experiencing that right now, I just want you to know that I feel you. I'm here with you. Really feeling into my heart today, and some challenging things. But that's why we have to come together, like it's not one of these things that raising kids is not something we're meant to do on our own without support. It's just not. We need each other. We really do. And if you can relate to this, just let me know in the comments. Say hi. Let me know you're listening. I think Sarah's here on Facebook, and just let me know. Let me know if you feel me on that, and maybe what is something that you do when your heart feels heavy about a relationship in your life, whether it's with a family member or a friend, a close friend, or someone you work with that, used to be on good terms and are just having a hard time right now. I'd love to hear what you do. A little bit advise the advisor moment. But, this is what it's about. We're crowdsourcing this. We're sharing with each other. And so as I bring up topics in this talk that you have some insight on, have you tried this? Which, when that happens with my kid, this is what I do. Chime in. Let's support each other. Okay. This is what the space is for. We can crowdsource it. And, when I'm coaching folks, we often do that. We'll have a moment of just reflecting and kind of sharing ideas with each other. And it's amazing what comes out of it. I'm looking forward to this 3-day event I'm doing at the end of the month called the Motivation Mastery Weekend. And we'll be doing just that. We'll be looking at, all these different ways to motivate kids and the research and having some hands-on experiences, but we'll also be learning from each other and having some experiences together where you go, oh, and light bulbs go off, and you get to do that together instead of on your own. Another thing I really believe in is mentorship, just because, why not ask somebody who's done it for 10,000 hours plus? We do that all the time. We turn to folks who have more experience than us. It's just a really smart thing to do. So good on you for saying yes and hitting play on the video and just saying, you know what, maybe there's something here that Vanessa has experienced and can add to my tools and strategies. Something that she's used or has found is helpful for her clients and other families that use these tools that could really help me too. So I'm glad you're here for that. So there are some folks who have written in, as they kind of requested to join the group. And I'll be popping their names into the comments just so we know, so they can get pinged and know where I'm addressing their concern or question. So Cheryl says she wants support with shelter in place in the pandemic. Yes. Yes, this is a really hard, unprecedented time. She's saying it has her whole family feeling emotionally fragile. Yeah. Kids are having lots of outburst tantrums, and it's challenging to respond with calm. Well, first of all, Cheryl, we would love to hear how that's going now, because this was a few weeks ago. So let us know in the comments. How is it going? Are you still experiencing this? What have you tried so far? We'd love to hear from you. An update, so we can kind of witness your journey and see ourselves in your experience too. One of the things that I can say is that we all need to lower our standards quite a bit of what we can get done and how quickly. We need to push back on pressure that we're getting from other folks, whether it's from a workplace or, as we're heading back into schools in the fall, what we were wrangling in the spring, whether it's like just your general, like even for yourself, your expectations of like how clean you're going to keep your house right now, in terms of messiness. Maybe it'll be well disinfected, but not as, like kind of zen and things put away, right? Not as much clear floor space, just even that, as usual. We're in our houses more, we're using our spaces more. So we need to also consider enrolling the kids and the whole family into care of the environment together. If there is often the case, it lands on one parent, typically the female or female identifying um, spouse, to pick up most of that labor, and it just tends to fall on one or the other person's shoulders, or depending on the family unit, somebody who takes on a lot of that. Well, when people were home, 30% of the time that they are now, that might have been sustainable. It'd be okay because there's a lot less impact on the environment. But right now we're having almost every meal at home. We're doing having almost all of our play and our creative crafts and our things at home, all kinds of things that make mess, right? Even like going through more sets of clothes, perhaps because things are messier in the yard and muddier than they would have been if they were on the grass at school or something. So we have to give ourselves a bit more space and grace for lowering our standards just a little bit or quite a bit to a tolerable level for now, and really practicing forgiveness of yourself and of your family, and that's just, it's how it is for now. Another thing is really getting folks on board with the chores and helping with the environment. So that's one thing. One of the ways we can kind of enroll, or like kind of motivate kids to get involved, is to really see it more as like part of their education, like their life education. In Montessori, we used to call it practical life. And many of you here are familiar with Montessori, and as simple as like getting a smaller size broom so they can help with sweeping up messes, involving them in your chores, even if they take a little longer at first, with that longer game in mind of like, I want my kids to have these life skills. I'd like some support with this right now, even though it'll take a little longer for the first few weeks. But I know that, we might be in the situation for months more. So might as well get them on board and helping. Another can be to revamp your routine. And that's something that I work closely with my clients with, and I give workshops on periodically, is, how to rehearse or how to design a routine, rehearse the routine so that you walk through it together, how to make agreements about the routine. When you're designing the routine, making sure it's really clear whose work is what steps your kids are really ready to do on their own, which ones they need support with, which ones you'd like them to learn next, so you can actually take some time out to train them or teach them. All of these things together can add up to things feeling a little bit less stressful in the household. The other thing that a lot of folks are facing right now is that, there hasn't been a very humane adjustment to the level of workload for the working parent that I think is appropriate. There's a bit of this, like, either you're here or you're furloughed, or a lot of folks are actually leaving jobs or not taking new jobs because they're full-time childcare now. And so kind of pushing back on that idea and moving towards the organizations who are taking a more humane approach to it. Like I did a workshop with DocuSign parents. It's their ERG, their employee resource group. And one of the things they were really doubling down on was just saying, look, if you have kids at home, we're going to make your work schedule incredibly flexible. We're going to figure this out with you. We understand that some of the conference calls can't happen during the day like they used to. We can't pack your schedule with video conferencing. We just can't do that to our working parents right now. We're gonna adjust our schedules, those of us who don't have kids, to do things like get up earlier, stay up late to have these conference calls with you, with these working parents. So advocating for things like that, finding solidarity with other parents who are in your work environment, and really looking at challenging some assumptions, right? Like about when work needs to happen, who's doing that work, Does it really require a meeting, or is this something that could be done outside of regular work hours when you're actually performing childcare duties? So that's a part 2. And then part 3 would be around your child's education. And I've already addressed that a little bit of just realizing that, this is an opportunity to practice a lot of life skills, things like time management, care of yourself. So like hygiene practices, care of others, providing service to your family members, learning how to cook a meal, or even if it's something simple like sandwiches, preparing food for others, learning how to grow a little garden, like things like that, potentially you might have access to right now. I don't want to assume that you do, but just some ideas to get you going. Another piece around education for children is that, having been an educator in a school environment for 15 years, I can tell you that for kids under 6, if you can fit in 2 good sessions a day that are about an hour long, one in math and one in language, or like half, it's really enough. Like, I think there's this idea that kids are in desks for 3 hours a day and then have a break and then another 3 hours a day as soon as they turn into kindergartners. And it's true that there are a lot of enriching activities or socialization and all these pieces that are not happening at home. But for actual instruction, it's amazing what you can get done in just 1 to 2 hours a day. It really can be enough to keep things moving. And there are a lot of free materials out there that are totally decent, If you have kids under 6, they can just be practicing with letters and numbers and getting really comfortable with practical math, and then working on some reading. For kids who are older throughout the summer, you're going to want to look at maybe seeing like, are there some really decent workbooks, and are there some folks in my community who are hosting, low cost tutoring, or could I split a tutor with somebody and, give a little bit of that labor away to like really well-designed materials, to programs online, to, possibly forming little pods of like folks who are, pooling for tutors for teachers. Also to know that, kids are really malleable. So like, I've had times where kids had big setbacks because of, in my career where there was a death in the family or an illness. The parents were being displaced and had to move, things that would disrupt life for several months. And kids are resilient and will bounce back academically, intellectually. Sometimes kids would come back from summer not having forgotten a ton of things, but having kind of like synthesized it because they had a little space from the subjects. So I really want you to, if you're doing any kind of like beating yourself up about not having kept up with homework or homeschooling, not having a rigorous program for your kids during the summer, are really worried about them being incredibly behind in the fall, don't beat yourself up about it. Try to find one thing you can do at a time and build towards several solutions over time. Okay. It is absolutely an unprecedented, amount of pressure, and I think unfair and less unreasonable would be maybe the better word, for parents to somehow recreate school for their children and robust childcare and run their household that's now full all the time, 24/7. And if you're a working parent, balance a full workload. These are three big jobs that maybe we need to, instead of what we would normally do 100%, we need to like cut down quite a bit, in terms of especially our expectation of how quickly things will get done, how much we get done in a 24-hour period, etc. Okay. So those are a few things. Now, in terms of being emotionally fragile, so when you notice that kids are emotionally fragile in your world, that's a time to kind of get receptive and sweet with them and give them a lot more of that kind of, more like open-ended kind of attention. One of the strategies for like building a positive relationship is called having non-directional dialogue with children. Oftentimes we're trying to get things done and make things happen and keep to the routine. And I do think they're like meals, like on time and timely meals and timely like bedtime and rest time, really great to like hold the line for those things right now so that you can help your kids regulate their systems better. And they're set up for success in that way. They have enough rest, they have enough food, they have enough water, they have enough activity, okay? Just general. But when it comes to like kind of I think what we can get into a mode of is like trying to keep the train moving or get the crew ready and like just, one thing after the next and just a lot of direction or a lot of like ignoring, like, here's your scream, see you in 3 hours, right? And I think what kids are feeling grumpy about, like realistically, right? I mean, reasonably, I should say, is that they don't have this like pool of stimulating like peers and other adults and enriching activities, and that's kind of what they're used to. And so of course they're emotionally fragile, right? They're like, what they're feeling, maybe some loneliness, they're feeling some maybe some boredom, they're feeling some frustration, maybe even some fear. And so this is a great time to get really tuned into them emotionally and become a really good emotion coach and give them a lot of great resources of how to navigate their emotions. Yeah. And so like, for example, just even bringing in like a little more humor to lighten things up. That was one of the strategies we did, about 4 weeks ago now. Being able to, take breaks from things that are frustrating or upsetting so they don't just keep wearing themselves out emotionally, with a frustrating little Lego project or something or puzzle, giving them space from that or from their siblings, perhaps. There's a lot of ways to address that emotional fragility in ways that like are proactive and are responsive in the moment, and then even preventative for the future, like kind of revisiting what happened in a meltdown or tantrum, trying to learn something from that, like, oh wow, maybe we shouldn't try this really difficult task right before lunch because you're hungry, helping them put those connections together, a little bit of life coaching for them through you, and just kind of running the ship in this kind of way where there's some flexibility and space for connection, and kind of dropping into non-directional dialogue I had mentioned. That's when you don't necessarily have like an agenda or a goal or a point that you're making. You're just connecting and just talking and just letting the conversation happen so they feel seen and heard and understood, that they receive your attention and everything. And really, to create that kind of space, you might need to push back on some other ideas you have about what you should be doing with your time, in order to keep things, exciting and full. Or it could be one little like kind of story you're running is that you have to keep it going. Another story you might be running is that there's no time because I have so much work to do, and I'd really trouble you to like push back on work expectations so they're more reasonable, and streamline your work process. Could be, I can't, honey, we've got too much mess we got to clean up. I mean, with a super messy living room, just still cuddle on the couch with them and just talk about whatever comes up, make those moments for each other. Then they'll feel that you're there no matter what. That's going to make a huge difference for them. Okay, so we're going to move on, but I'm glad, Cheryl, that you asked this question. I picked it because it was the biggest one and it was the more all-encompassing one. When they're having lots of outbursts and tantrums, and then I want to also put in a few more names here of other folks. I think there was Bennett, who also had asked about this. Right, let's see who else. And Alexandra Levitch had asked about this, and just kind of like navigating tantrums and meltdowns. And Jennifer, when they don't listen, right? I think you had mentioned was one that you wanted support with. So these are folks who I'm just tagging in here if you're tagged here, so that I'm addressing your questions. So, well, staying calm when we are not really calm, always, which is exactly what Alexandra said and Jennifer said, managing frustration. And I think this is definitely connected, Bennett and Cheryl, about what to do during an outburst or tantrum, because I'm sure it's part of the challenge of staying calm. First of all, is to like accept that the tantrum is happening and the meltdown is happening. You're like, okay, looks like I have a child in my house, because I had to do that too when I first became a teacher, especially with the young ones. I was like, oh, it's just going to be fun. I'll entertain them. We'll have a good time. And if they're happy, that means I'm doing a good job. If they're sad, it means I need to fix it or do something about it. it turns out that kids are wired to meltdown and tantrum. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Guess what? It's going to happen. There's not really anything like, you can do to fully 100% prevent meltdowns and tantrums, especially during a global pandemic, So the first step is acceptance, just like accepting, like, okay, so kids are wired to meltdown and tantrum. And what research has shown is that it's really to draw attention to their needs or desires, and what they're saying, what the words that are coming out of their mouth, or the thing that upset them, may not actually be the thing they need or truly desire in the end. They could be seeking things like attention, power, revenge. They could be showing you that they don't think that they're like assuming inadequacy. They really don't know how to do it, and they're worried to show that. So instead, they get out of it by throwing a fit. It could be that they're tired, hungry, lonely, and having a bad mood moment, and that's about it. And it could be also that when you're giving them a limit, it hasn't been established in the way that they are on board with yet. And I say yet, right? Because there's also ways to really get kids on board with boundaries and listening. So before I segue to that, accepting that these things happen, the meltdowns happen, it's not always an indication that you have done something wrong or that your kid is being a brat. Okay? It's just their way of trying to communicate something to you. So I would first just consider meltdowns are normal and a form of communication. What is my child trying to really get, or what does my child really need here? What are they really communicating to me? And responding to that. Now, oftentimes we have to do unpleasant things when we are in an unpleasant situation. It might mean that you need to walk away and take some space and calm down yourself before you come back, which we call like putting your lid back on, with the brain in the palm of your hand, model that we've talked about, where we talk about how you have this like limbic system and amygdala with alarm center. You have your prefrontal cortex, your thinking part of your brain that it kind of goes offline when you flip your lid, and then your alarm center is in control. You no longer have your good judgment, your memory, your like logic, your rationality to be able to put things together in a way that is actually productive. And so for you and for the child, when the lid flips, it's really hard to be productive in that moment. So something you should be aware of, and I coach all of my clients and everybody who gets into my world about, is becoming a good lid detector, would be my second tip. Really look, like, how far is that lid off? Which part of the brain am I really dealing with here? Because if I'm dealing with the downstairs brain, that's all emotion, like all I can do is like, act swiftly and show empathy and really just try and help them through the emotion. Whether it means I'm there with them working it through, or I take space and have them figure out a way that they work through it. But just know that you're not going to get like that understanding from them through like, explaining things to them, beyond something really simple. It's going to be super simple. You're not going to necessarily be able to just get them to like switch from screaming and hitting to being nice. That's like too big of a switch. I've had a lot of parents fall into that trap. Now be nice. No, that's not nice. You're still not being nice. And it's like, well, their lids are off and nice is pretty far away. Like they need to kind of, put that lid back on before they're going to actually have the, the coolness. And also maybe there's something they should be mad about. Like their sibling grabbed something out of their hand, right? And that anger is justifiable. It's just not being used very, very productively right now. Maybe they do have something to say and they just need to do it without screaming in their face and hitting them, right? So just know that like, if you can accept that the meltdown is happening, you can become a good lid detector and respond to your own emotion and their emotion, as well as, as kind of aligned as possible to how upset they really, the person really is, the collective group is at that time. That's a good starting place. You can get really, really far with that. I've been in so many hot, sweaty, difficult moments with like kids being all kinds of ways. biting each other, hitting, screaming, refusing, shutting down, throwing themselves on the floor, face down. I mean, you name it, I've seen it. Trust me, all the way up to like age 16, right? I've seen all kinds of things. And these things help. If I go, okay, this happens, and I say, I wonder where they're really at. Okay, I think what they need right now is for me to just empathize with them and let them know like they're going to be okay. Or I think they're ready for maybe a little bit of discussion here. Let me try that next, and really just like kind of having the kind of the authority in a way, the slightly detached perspective of like, and the like kind of being in the driver's seat and control of like that leadership that kids really need from us in that moment. They do not need us to get down to their like to get to kind of stoop to the level of their meltdown and participate in the drama. They don't need that from us. So try to stay out of that. And then the last thing would be to like just build up your big reservoir of coping tools and strategies for the whole family coping tools, whole family strategies, and work on those like all year long with the parents in my academy, and give them great resources to be able to teach them to their children. So important, because it's one thing to say, go calm down. And it's another to say, hey, what would you like to do in the calm down corner? Last time you worked with some clay, would you like to try that again? Or is there something else? Maybe blow some bubbles. Notice I'm already offering choices that they already know about. And then they go, bubbles, and then go march over to the corner. Or like, I don't know, but still go over there and figure it out. I've seen it, friends, and it's wildly helpful. Like, having a place to go where it's and having it be normalized, like, hey, we're people, we have a hard time sometimes and we need help with that. How compassionate, how compassionate to say, yeah, it's a good idea for you to go take care of yourself. Yeah, it's a good idea for me to come with you, if they invite you, right? Yeah, it's probably a good idea we take a moment and just like read a book and calm down, and then we can talk about what just happened in the bathtub. Yeah, how compassionate and kind, right? And what I've seen happen is that kids trust you more, listen to you more, are down to be coached more, are more likely to use that strategy on their own, are more likely to share that strategy with another child or human in their midst. Sometimes they'll even coach you and they'll become a little lid detector too and let you know how far your lid is off. Yeah. So Bennett, Alexandra, Jennifer, Cheryl, I hope that was helpful to your questions. I want to make sure I get to everybody that I had put in the post here. Oh, good. So some folks want to know about boundaries, and that was one that I wanted to talk about today too. It's another of my 7 pillars of raising a resilient child. And I'll put a link to that guide in this post so you can review that and get a sense of what I'm talking about. But basically what we're looking at with boundaries and setting up limits is just really wanting to make sure, Kimmy, I think we pretty much addressed what you were asking about too. So I'll just put your name here. So if you go to the spot in the video, make sure you rewind and listen to the part where I put the comment about to Bennett and Alexandra. Okay, because you were talking about really feeling stressed, anxious, and overwhelmed, and feeling depleted and not doing things right. I mean, I would start from the beginning, Akimi. Okay, so here's your comment. So back to the boundaries. Annie Chung, I want you to know that this is a really common thing that people are asking about, just like the other emotional mastery pieces that we've been going over, and even a little bit of, we did a little robust routines in there. This is really common to be asking about boundaries. And Jillian, I'm going to put you here too, because of talking about, getting kids on board with what behaviors are okay and what are not okay. It sounds like another boundary question. Same with Abigail about make sure you listen to the earlier part about the whining and the stomping. But I also want to talk to you a bit about bedtime and being a good listener. Lisa Marie, same about being a good listener and needing to do things like potty and changing clothes. Sounds like she's got some specific things she doesn't want to do. Yeah, and then Lee and Linden, I talked a bit about this, the 4-year-old better coping strategies. You know, I would add one thing before we go straight into boundaries and stuff, is that, because this applies as well, the more we role model to kids the behavior we want to see, the more likely they're going to do that behavior, the more likely they're going to get on board with us. Excuse me. So when we're talking about introducing coping tools and strategies, notice that I was mostly talking about the kid going to the calm down corner. Well, I have dramatized this every year for all the kids who've ever had me in the last, I don't know, the last 10 years of my career at the minimum, have seen me use a coping tool that I want them to use. So number one, always, 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 always show more than you tell, role model, role model, role model. And have it be sometimes really on the nose for younger kids, like literally act like them and then go stop, notice that you're acting that way. So for, I think it was Abigail was talking about the stomping. Yeah, whining and stomping, Abigail, with your 7-year-old. You could do that. You could also throw a little foot, just a little one, at bedtime, going, oh, like I don't want to go either. I don't want to go to bed either. And then model what it's like to release that tension, accept what's the situation, say your piece if you need to, and go and maybe do something to like calm yourself down. It's like, you know, well, I guess I have to go to bed right now. And it is bedtime. You know, talk out loud, think out loud how you hope she'll think for herself, and say something like, oh, okay, fine. Oh, Abigail, I'm actually answering your, I'm glad you're here. I'm answering your comment about not being a good listener, about especially around bedtime. So the thing I was reviewing is how powerful it can be to role model the alternative way that you'd love your child to handle themselves. So, and even modeling a coping tool or strategy, which is what I was responding to Lee's comment about, which is like, so you could even be at bedtime and kind of mirror a little bit of like what your 7-year-old is doing, and then say something like, oh, I'm also, this is frustrating. I get it. Like, oh yeah, it can be so frustrating to go to bed. I get it, you know, and just so she can kind of track with you. Oh, you're kind of empathizing, feeling how I feel, and then show her how you'd rather her deal with it. So it could look like, I need to go do something else. I'm going to look at a book. I guess I'll pick a book and I'm going to pick one that I like. So it gets my mind off of this. Fine. I'll go read my book, and then go sit on the couch and take out a book and start reading, and just show what that looks like, to make a different choice beside, no, I'm not going to bed. Oh, I don't have to go to bed. And it's like all this like kind of confrontational stuff. It's like shifting that from kind of like blame and emotionally dumping on other people and all this stuff, to like, I'm going to take care of me and take some responsibility for how I feel by picking one strategy, which in this case was redirecting your attention into a book, and acknowledging and tuning into the fact that I'm upset right now. So that's the first thing. Now, talking about boundaries in general and setting limits, one of the things that helps kids so much is really, and I mentioned this about routines a little bit, is rehearsing. And in order to rehearse, you have to get really clear. And in order to get really clear, you have to figure out what is your actual boundary, or what is your actual step in the routine, and who's responsible for it. What does it look like? So getting really clear about what is it that you're asking for, rather than focusing on what you're asking for them to stop doing. Really focus on what you'd like them to do and practice that. So think of this as like a play. I talk about rehearsing routines as a play. You can even rehearse like limit setting moments as a play. But if I just threw you as an actor on stage and said, okay, I really want you to like be kind, listen really well, and do the right thing. Go. They'll be like, well, I kind of know what to do. I think I know what to do. I'll do this, but then they get distracted because they're not really grounded in what it is. Like they're not really clear about what it is they're supposed to be doing. you could feel a little lost and also rebellious even. Like, I don't even know what you want. Or you could come together in a huddle, like a crew, right? Like a stage crew or as what are they called? Like the player group, right? I'm not thinking of the right collective noun here. Troop, like a troop, and rehearse it a bit and get really clear. Like, no, like actually, like when it's 7:50, that is when all the devices get turned off, so we can have that 1 hour of quiet time before we get ready for, before bedtime. How are we going to make this happen? Who's going to be in charge of watching that time? Who's going to, who turns off the devices? Do we all turn off our own devices? Do you think we should probably put them all in one place or put them away out of sight so we're not like tempted? What is our plan here? Let's talk it through and let's rehearse it through. Okay, right. Let's everybody pretend it's 7:40. It's 7:49. What's happening? Okay, mom's gonna say, all right, everybody, it's 7:50. You know what that means. And then the kids are like, they can groan and moan if they want. It's fine. But the expectation is that by 8 o'clock, devices off, devices put away, right? And we'll revisit it as many times as we need to until it happens smoothly without a big fuss. A little fuss, sure, whatever. It doesn't have to be like a Pollyanna world, right? People can groan and moan and express their emotion. Why not? You can be grumpy about it, but it's still going to get turned off and put away by 8. You feel me? Yeah. So getting them on board. So getting really clear about what it is you want. Even like the steps that it would take and what it would look like. Even as simple as like saying, being that clear of like, hey, you can complain if you want at that time, but it still needs to happen, and I can hear that. I can hear complaints about it. It's not gonna, bother me that much. I can do that. So being clear, maybe your boundaries then no, like go complain, keep your complaints to yourself. I don't want to hear that. Like you have to figure out for yourself what that boundary is and get really clear about it and give the kids an opportunity just to know what that is, to practice it with you, and to continue revisiting it until it goes more smoothly. It works over time. It does. I had a child who absolutely would go to the pencil sharpener and sharpen it and sharpen it and sharpen it until it was this big, wasting the pencils, wasting the time, making a bunch of noise, drawing a bunch of attention. And it took, 3 to 4 weeks to break the habit, but we got there. Now just revisit the limit and rehearse through. And we would take the time to go practice sharpening the pencil until you could hear it change. And the sound changed. And I said, can you hear that? And if they said no, I said, well, until you can hear that, then we'll sharpen pencils together. And they learned how to listen for the sound. And they also stopped, the tricky side of it, of like pretending that they didn't know. And it just was like, I just kind of kept giving the benefit of the doubt. I'm like, okay, let's practice again. Let's practice again. And even in a Montessori environment, we used to say, like, do you need another presentation on that? Are you confused? Do you need a presentation or do you know how to do that? And eventually the kids would much rather do it themselves and do it right or right enough than have a teacher constantly there reteaching it to them over and over again. Eventually, right? And then the kids who wanted to be retaught over and over again, I just use that time to kind of bond with them, build some rapport with them. Maybe they're actually seeking attention, right? Maybe they want a little more power and they're trying to figure out how that works, And I just sort of was like, okay, you can have my attention. You can have my time and attention right now. That's okay. And we're going to do this, right enough. They're going to just like, sharpen it to a stub or whatever the thing is. We're not going to leave a big mess for the next person, etc. So there's some ways to go about it that don't feel so like you're kind of stuck in this rut of either they listen or there's a conflict. I've been there so many times. I know that feeling of like, where's my third path? So hopefully I've given you some ideas of things that you could try to rehearse, to get really clear, to rehearse, and then to revisit and reteach as much as necessary until you get to a place where they want to do it independently and they want to listen really well. Now, there are a lot of other things that get in the way of a child getting on board and listening. And so I'll leave you with this, a quick list. Sometimes they need us to get into their world before we ask them to do things. So you might just consider, I'm asking them to abruptly switch what they're doing and snap to attention and do what I say. you might consider stretching that moment out and creating a little bit of a gentler transition where you get into their world before you ask them to get into yours. That's one. Another is connecting before correcting, man. Like, nobody likes someone to walk through the door and give them a criticism. As a matter of fact, you probably leave that workplace if that's how it ran, right? You'd be out of there. And if it's not a choice for you to leave, you start acting out. It's or feeling lower self-esteem, right? It's a less sense of, agency or something, or personhood, right? It would chip away at you. So connecting with the child before you correct them, unless there's something happening with health and safety, like they're hitting or endangering themselves, of course, just intervene, act quickly. You don't have to say, hey, honey, how was your day, while they're hitting you, no. But just in general, if you feel like you're giving a lot of feedback over and over again, where you're correcting more than you're connecting, consider that idea of connecting first. Here's another one. Positive relationships take a 4-to-1 ratio of positive interactions to negative interactions. So another reason to connect before you correct and get into their world, because if you're having more negative interactions than positive, your relationship is not on very good terms, which means that when you ask them to do something, they're less likely to listen. They're less likely to respect you. They're less likely to care that they've upset you, all kinds of things, right? But if a relationship is on good terms and they feel like aligned with you, they're much more likely to do the things that you're requesting of them. And sometimes it takes time. There's some repair to do. There's some like establishing a new kind of rapport. Perhaps you've been too like peer-to-peer with them and haven't had enough leadership. Perhaps you've been too much authority, asking for compliance, and there's not enough kind of peer-to-peer feeling of friendship and connection. Perhaps you're somewhere in the middle trying to sort through it all. But something to consider is just how the relationship itself is going, because not listening can just be a symptom of a relationship that's rocky and needs some repair and some attention to reestablish or newly establish your leadership in the family and what a kind and collaborative leader you can be. So those are some things. Also, just motivation in general. There are motivation blocks. Sometimes not listening is just not motivated properly. Yeah. And so I'm not going to be able to go any further into that today, but I encourage you to look and listen to the last 2 videos that are posted here, where I talk about motivation hacks for establishing new habits for yourself, and then also my framework of 5 motivation hacks that you can use to address lack of motivation, which could be what's really going on. Not so much about obedience or listening. It could be something else, right? So I encourage you to go back through the library, folks. Look at the topics of what the videos are about. They're not, they don't expire. Like the advice I give in there is tried and true. It worked 10 years ago for me. It worked 5 years ago for me. It worked yesterday for one of my parent clients. It's going to work tomorrow for you. Okay. So please go peruse, enjoy. These videos are my gift to you while we're in shelter in place. Once we hit a bigger phase of openness, I'll go back to only leaving them up for a month. But it's been my wish for parents to feel more resourced now than ever, to be able to really find support here. Okay. So let us know in the comments any of these topics that I brought up. If you have something to add while you're listening, or even right now, something you took away from this that you want to remember, it's always a good idea to write it into the comments so that you can have that sort of integration piece of like, I really want to remember to connect before I correct. I really want to get into my child's world. I'd really like to rehearse a routine before I expect my kids to follow it smoothly. I really want to give people different jobs and roles and let them take on chores more than I used to, because we're home so much. And I'm going to push and advocate in my workplace for something more reasonable for myself, because I'm a working parent and I'm in a unique situation. And so maybe exploring or re-exploring that, talking to some other parents in your workplace. Lots of ideas here. Hope some of them are helpful to you. And I'll see you next time. And go easy, go well. Hope you and your children are able to, find moments to build some happy memories too, some positive memories during this really challenging time. And just remember to be gentle with yourselves and each other. And I see you, I hear you, I believe in you, and you can absolutely get through this time. Actually feeling proud of how resilient you were through it all. And if you're not having an easy time, just know you're not alone, and how human of you. Just please keep coming back for more information and more tools and strategies and more community. Okay. All right. We'll see you next time.